There are three questions that I want to pick up. Who will feed India? In the light of that question, recent performance last 10-15 years and emerging challenges to Indian agriculture, but also look at the big business opportunities while feeding the people of this country. Now what we know, 1.25 billion today, and by 2028, we will be the most populous country in the world, overtaking China in terms of population. And then we are likely to stabilize at 1.6 billion by 2050. Today, roughly 400 million people in urban areas. By 2030, we are going to be 600 million in urban areas. As they say, we have to build one Chicago almost every year till 2030 if we have to give them reasonable comforts of an urban India. Now, two things that we must take care of it. Even today, average household in India is spending 45% of its expenditure on food. In Western countries, it hovers around 10%, plus minus 2% here or there. Now, why I am putting this question, who will feed India? This is a question which was earlier put, and a bit of history. We know about Surge 1, Green Revolution in 60s. What I want to put here on the table is that it was primarily driven by government in collaboration with international agencies. Surge 2 came in 70s, White Revolution. And this was driven by a cooperative network supported strongly by the government. All the infrastructure costs of building the value chain in the system was literally given by the government, monetizing the EU aid and given to Mr. Kurian, who became the milkman of India. Everybody knows about that. Blast 3 came in the last 10 years. In 2002-03, we were literally either importing or marginally self-sufficient in cotton. Last year, we were the second biggest exporter of cotton in the world. And it came from BT cotton. Despite the government, the revolution happened. BT cotton came from the biggest multinational and spread to the lowest farmer. Today, 90% of cotton area is under BT, which it has never happened in any country, including US, China, Brazil, so quickly and by such small holders. This is a miracle. Also, there is a revolution of hybrid maize in the country in the last 10 years, and these are basically driven by the private sector. So you had from the government to co-op to the private sector. That's the institutional change that we must note where the things are headed. Overall, looking at the grain production, you have a reasonably smooth going up situation. Nothing dramatic. But this is a story. I think milk offers huge business opportunities, and I would like to touch base on this. 1950-51, US milk production was about 56 million tons, and India was at 17 million tons. You look at, India has gone lately now to 136 million tons, and US is hovering around 90 million tons. You project it for the next 10 years, India will be at 170-75 million tons of milk, the largest producer in the world, and this revolution is done not by very big players of 200 cows, but those who have 4 cows or 2 buffaloes and like that. So small can also turn around a huge business opportunity if we know how to connect the dots. And that is an institutional revolution supported by infrastructure of building a proper value chain where the farmer can get a respectable price for his produce reduces risk, and he can gradually start scaling up. There has been a lot of controversy on many of these numbers, that Indian agriculture is that dying or flying or somehow limping around. If you look at the long-term rate of growth in Indian agriculture for the last 2.5 decades, let's say starting from 90 onwards, 91, you will find Indian agriculture long-term rate of growth hovers around 3%, 3.1% or so. But there is a dramatic change that happened in 2000 in certain states. And I was looking at what are these states, and perhaps Swami can give you a better answer, that those states, at least 3 of them, Gujarat, MP, Chhattisgarh, where the rates of growth are more than 7% per annum for 10 years, they are the ones who have brought the chief ministers back into. So there can be good politics and there could be good economics. But on feeding India, getting back, whether we will be importing, and remember, Planning Commission, 2006 saying by 2011-12, we will be importing 10-12 million tons of food grains. And what was happening? We put export ban in 2007 on wheat and rice. Only basmati was allowed, but common rice was not allowed. And in 11 October, we relaxed the ban. And when we relaxed the ban, you look at 11, 12, 12, 13, 13, 14. Last 2 years, if you look at 12, 13, 13, 14, India exported roughly 42, 43 million tons of cereals from this country. It has never done in the last 3,000 years of history. So if we have to look over the next 15 years, 20 years in terms of whether India can feed itself or not, what we have to look at what rate overall agriculture can grow. And what drives agriculture growth, one of the key parameters is capital formation or investments in agriculture. And we will see something fascinating that has happened in Indian agriculture, a structural change. Second, how remunerative is Indian agriculture? Price incentives. And then, of course, you have an unknown variable, rainfall at what level. These 3 are the critical variables. Now, this is fascinating. If you look from 1980 onwards, even up to 2002-3 or so, this gray line, there are 2 things here that are happening. One is the capital formation as a percentage of agriculture GDP. It used to hover around 10%, and the incremental capital output ratio in agriculture was supposed to be always 4:1. Now, if you are investing about 10% of GDP, agriculture GDP, then you would expect 2.5, maximum 3% rate of growth. And that's what was happening all these years. But after that, something changed dramatically. And today, the capital formation in agriculture is almost double of what it was in 2000. It's about 20%. And that is a major structural change that has happened. Secondly, the green area is the private capital formation, and the red area is the public, that is the government. At the beginning of 80s, it was roughly 50-50. That 50% of the investment in agriculture was coming from government side and 50% coming from the farmer side. And now, you look at that, and almost 85% of the investment in agriculture is coming from the private sector, that is farmers themselves, not the corporates. It's the farmers basically who are investing. And basically in 2 things, 80% of this investment is going in irrigation, pump sets, and farm machinery, mechanization that is happening. And that is a structural change that is going on in the Indian agriculture. Now, private sector investment is driven by what is happening to the relative price structure in the economy. agriculture prices versus manufactured prices, non-agriculture in a way. Services not here, but the manufactured prices if you take versus the agriculture prices, that ratio, which was below, and that is in all these earlier years, the incentive structure was tilted in favor of industry and against agriculture. That started changing, and you will see around 2004-05 onwards, and now it is 50% better. Now, was it a deliberate government policy to do it? I would not give more than 25% credit to the government as far as the price structure was concerned. It was basically driven by global factors. We know after 2004-05, global prices of agriculture first started improving, and after 2007-08, they just erupted. And they went so high, and Indian agriculture basically followed that, or Indian government policy with hiccups, it followed it and reached the global price structure. What will happen now when they are coming down? Challenges. The average holding size in India for agriculture holding by the last census was 1.15 hectares. Now, many people say, how would you do farming on a 1.15 hectare land? In China, it is half of this, 0.6. Their productivity is double than ours in most of the crops, or at least 50% higher. So, lower or smaller holding size is not a constraint in increasing productivity, provided they have access to modern inputs, because seed is perfectly divisible, water is perfectly divisible, fertilizer is perfectly divisible. How to create these surpluses, aggregating them, bringing it to the urban areas, that's a challenge where the scale is needed, or how to process them. So you have to create a scale that is more institutional engineering. How do you create a scale? And that we did. In case of milk, all our farmers were 2 cows and 4 cows, or buffaloes. And we created a scale. And we are still processing only 20% of the milk that we are producing through the organized sector. 80% is still waiting to be harnessed. So there is a huge business opportunity there. But that's one area. Another challenge is the input subsidies. In fact, if you look within the government system, there are 5 ministries which are dealing with agriculture and food space. Agriculture, food, fertilizer, water resources, and agro-processing. If you take these 5 ministries, their budget for the last year, 14-15, 250,000 crores, right? Out of this, 80% is going as subsidies on food and fertilizer alone. So what you are doing is you are putting the cart before the horse. And this is a big challenge if you want to rev up agriculture growth. 80% should go as investments and only 20% should be subsidies. And that's the biggest political challenge as on today. Another major challenge that is coming is climate change. The spikes in temperature, the extreme events are increasing, the frequency of those. And if we go by the climate models, what is likely to happen? In India particularly, you are going to have more floods in the Tarai belt, in the slopes of the mountains, Himalayan, and greater droughts with greater intensity in the Deccan Plateau. What is going to happen to GMOs? We have seen the results of GMOs for cotton. It was in the field before the government approval really came in. The test is now BT brinjal. But the future of Indian agriculture and growth is going to come not from grains. When income levels go up, they do not consume more cereals. They consume more of high-value agriculture, more of milk and milk products, meat, and so on and so forth. And they will require, that's where the wastages are about 25 to 30%. There is no standard nationwide survey, but there are smaller surveys which indicate that there are a lot of wastages, perishable. That's where investment in building value chains can save a lot, and if you can connect directly with the farmers groups, that's where big money also can be made. Indian policy always discusses about grains. Many of you here must have heard 265 million tons India has produced, highest grains. 80% of the policy debate remains on grains. The value of grains in the country's agriculture output is less than 23%. How many people have heard that the horticulture production is higher than the grain production in the country? We are the second largest producer of horticulture produce in the world. And we don't have enough value chains for that. And that's where big rice, we are already the largest exporter. Last slide, and then we can have questions. The difference between India and China, they are producing 500 million tons of grains and still importing. Last year they imported 70 million tons of soybean. 70 million tons of soybean to feed their hogs, and because they take a lot of hog meat, that's what their preference function is. Indian NSS survey on consumption shows Indians will not go for much of beef, will not go for hogs. The pressure will be on poor chicken. And the poor chicken is a very efficient converter of energy. You require 7 kilograms of grains to get 1 kg of beef meat. You need 5 kg of grain for 1 kg of pork. But you need, I used to take 2 kg of grain for 1 kg of poultry meat, but Sugna and Venkateshwara hatcheries told me this is an overestimate. We are getting it at 1.6 kilograms of grains to 1 kg of poultry. So the pressure in India, 20 to 30 million tons is sufficient as feedstock. In China, you need 200 million tons of grain for feedstock. And that is our secret of vegetarianism. Even chicken, only 24% people are consuming. So you can imagine. But investment in infrastructure and processing, I think we have to streamline the subsidies. Whether the new government will do this or not, only time will tell. My last take on this is that by 2030, I am reasonably confident that India will be feeding itself reasonably comfortably.